Good evening, I'm Michael Popa, Executive Director of Mainstream Coalition, and thank you for joining this candidate forum presented by the League of Women Voters, Mainstream Coalition, Climate Action KC, Dot Votes, Mid-America LGBT Chamber, Safe and Welcoming Wyandotte Coalition, and Servicing Lips. Tonight we are offering a closed caption through a third-party service. You can find that at the bottom of your screen. If you don't see the closed captions, just hit the CC button and click Show Captions. If time permits this evening, we'll also be taking questions from you, the audience. So please use the Q&A feature to submit your questions, also found at the bottom of your screen. If you're on a mobile device, you may need to click the ... or more icon. Tonight, we will hear from all of the candidates running for KCK Public Schools Board of Education. Candidates will have 2 minutes to answer each question, and we'll be monitoring that time. We'll be monitoring the time remaining for each of the questions, and we'll provide a countdown in the chat for 1 minute, 30 seconds, 10 seconds, and time. If a candidate continues after time, our moderator will thank them and move on to the next question. You can find a link to the full forum guidelines in the chat box now or pretty soon. The partner organizations co-sponsoring this forum, we believe that democracy works best when citizens are informed and active. We hope this forum provides you the opportunity to learn more about the candidates on your ballot and make an informed decision when you cast your vote. And now I'd like to welcome our moderator for the evening, Sheyvette Dinkens with Dot Votes.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us. Tonight, we're going to start with Wanda. And the first question is, what is your top goals and priorities for the school district?
Okay, thank you, Jeanette, for allowing me the opportunity to come on. And I accept when Dr. Lane said that Kansas City, Kansas School District could be a top 10 school district. I believe that also. And we can do that by working to improve student achievement, by strengthening our accountability of our school programs, continue to nurture our communication with our community, and improve parental involvement and support social and emotional growth. If we can begin to do those things, and we've started, we still have a lot of work to do. We're not perfect, but I think we can get there. If we can get parents, students, community, along with the district, be that three-legged stool, we can do this. And I believe we can. And that's what I want to see us do, because every student deserves a quality education.
Thank you, Wanda. Next up, we'll hear from Maxine.
Thank you for allowing me to be here. First, I'd just like to say that I am Maxine Drew, and I am asking for the citizens in Kansas City, Kansas to re-elect me as a school board member in November. I am a product of Kansas City, Kansas. I was born and raised here. I was a student in the school system, and after graduating, I became an educator within the system for 35 years. Once being on the school board, I learned to maintain a passion to help all of our stakeholders to be a part of this school district. I've learned how to be able to listen, to engage, and then to develop a positive, successful way in which we can help our students to grow, to be able to reach their goals in life. Despite the fact that we have gone through several obstacles that have come up, it is my goal for us to continue to work collectively together to bring about a change of equity, to have a mutual point of opportunity to make sure that we make the right decisions. We must be surprisingly realistic in order to invest in our community with advice and support that would be embraced by all entities with plans for growth and development within our district. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Maxine. Next, we'll have Rachel.
Good evening, and thank you to all the partners that organized this event. I would say that a couple of my priorities are the things that I think will be additions or things that we can continue to look at throughout the district is elevating parents and the community, really ensuring that they have a place at the table, not just checking the box. Oftentimes, parents are an afterthought, or they are brought to the table when it's convenient or a grant requirement or what have you. But how do we build authentic relationships with families and ensure that they are at the policy-making table, even if they don't hold a seat on the school board? The other thing that I would look at is, what does it look like to innovate school learning in the 21st century? Does it look like an 8-hour day still? Does it look like we're creating partnerships with local businesses to allow for our students to have access to those things that they traditionally wouldn't have access to outside of the classroom? I think the last piece that I'll mention here is continuing to make sure that our classrooms and folks in leadership reflect those that we serve. Making sure that we have people of color, that people who speak multiple languages. How do we attract staff and teachers that represent the population of the student base that we serve?
Thank you very much. And next we'll have Angelynn.
Hi, thank you for having me. Hello, everyone. I'm glad to be here. This is my first time through all of this. So my top priority is educating our students. And when I say educating our students, I believe we need a new 21st century curriculum, which will include not only the technology, but also some books for math classes, science classes. We also need to have inclusion, and inclusion would include the parents, the teachers, and the staff. I think a lot of times things are decided without asking anybody, and they're just thrown in there. And so my priority would be to make sure that all of us are included, that we all have a voice, and that we all represent what the educational system should look like. And past that, discipline problems are a priority. We as adults need to take back the educational system. We need to take back our classrooms. We need to let the students know that the adults and consequences do happen, can happen, and will happen. And I'm just for a little bit of change. And I think it takes all of us to make that change.
Thank you. Last up for this question, we'll have Diosselyn.
Thank you, Sheyvette. And I want to say also thank you to every partner that put this on. It is wonderful to see that this is still going and we're here. So real quick, my name is Diosselyn Tot, and I'm running for USC 500 School Board, as you know. A lot of my priorities, because I have a couple, is to reinvest in our communities and district. With that, I just mean being able to bring up the individuals that are here, that we've been putting our time, our efforts. There's so many of us here that want to be able to give back and start putting into our school district. Then boost transparency and communication. One of the things that we have lost is the trust in our community, and we need to rebuild that. And that's one of the biggest priorities that I want to put forward. We need to rebuild that trust because we need everybody to work on this. We need a village. It takes a village. I also want to increase our mental health resources. Just like you, Maxine, I'm a USD 500 alumni. I understand a lot of the things that I've been through. One of the only Latinas that is here, and that's my last point. Representation matters, and it's for the next ones, for the individuals that are coming after us. I want them to be able to see someone like us. I want them to see that we graduate, we get to different places, we're gonna go to different levels, and they can be in this seat too. I would be one of the youngest Latinas naturalized to be elected if I get chosen in the seat. And I want to be able to bring all my skills, all my experiences, and even my own story to the table.
Thank you, ladies, for that response. Next up, we're going to have Maxine, and the question is, as a school board member, how would you guide and support DEI in your district?
One of the things I feel that we need to do, first of all, is to make sure not just we as board members know what it is, that the rest of our community within the schools and even the students understand what it's all about. The only way that we can do it is what is the way in which we have been set up. Educate, get feedback, not only from our staff, from the parents, but also listen to some of our students to find out some of the reasons that are going on that is allowing them to be included in situations such as that. As a school board member, I think it's most important that we would sit down and talk about it as much as we can to put some directives in as how we can address it. And then once we do address it, try to get the support, more importantly, from parents to be able to accept the plan that we have in place. And making sure that our students recognize that in order for them to be able to reach their goals, there's some things they're going to have to let go of. And so that is one of the main ways I believe that we can do it, is through active communication and then putting in a plan and getting some feedback from all of the entities who are going to be involved.
Thank you, Maxine. Next, we'll have Rachel.
Yeah, so as a school board member, I would like to spend some time educating the community about the purpose of the DEI team that we have at the central office. Do people even know that that exists? And what role do those individuals play? But I also think that the DEI work begins at the school building level. So what is the culture of diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives? So what do our classrooms represent? What do our libraries represent? Where does the opportunity for growth lie in diversity and equity and inclusion for our school level administrators? What is the awareness? What is the training? But when you do some time educating and involving many different individuals in that educational period, we will get to know more of what it is our district needs in order to be more inclusive, to be more equitable, to strive towards being more diverse. And so I would say all of those things, initiatives and strategies are great, but we really have to truly make sure that DEI is part of the culture. It's baked into the cake of how we are running our school district. So how are we ensuring that decisions that are made are equitable for those that live in the higher end of communities versus those that don't? I think most recently I thought of equity when we talk about putting law enforcement officers into our school buildings. So what does that look like when you have a high presence at one school and a low presence? So what are you interpreting, or what bias can be created by those types of things and those decisions that are made? So that's what I would say.
Thank you, Rachel. Next up, we will have Angelynn.
Hi, my perspective on the diversity, equity, and inclusion represents the hiring process. I'm interested in having a group or panel type of hiring for our diversity. I think right now we're, just one person making the decision. I think all of the applicants need to be interviewed that are qualified. I think that we need to make sure that there are appropriate questions asked when interviewing. I think it would help if the panel would include a student, a teacher, an administrator, and then someone from HR. I think that we each represent a different part of our culture. We all have different perceptions. We all speak differently to each other. So I think in the recruiting process, we need to send someone of that ethnicity to recruit that person so that you can speak to them in the language that they're accustomed to be spoken to. I think that would help us in gaining more Black and Hispanic teachers that would be there for our students. I think also our teachers need to live within the district so that they can understand the social and economic day-to-day living that our students are going through. And I think by them not being within the district, then they separate themselves, and then they don't really know how to deal with our students on a daily basis, or they're afraid to talk to them or speak to them in a way that they can really understand. And so I think we all need to come together and have a good group panel that can get us a
Excuse me,
real
that's
diverse
Time.
group of
Time.
educators. Oh, my
Thank you.
screen went away. It went away, it went away.
Last the next response we have is from Diosselyn. Thank you, Angelynn.
Thank you, Sheyvette. Okay, I'll try to keep it short too, because DEI, honestly, I am super involved in this. There's so many things that I want to talk about and hit on, because DEI is not the only word that we're like that is out there, right? There's DEIJ, which influences justice. There's Ready as well that is about to speak Spanish. There's Ready as well that involves race. There's so many perspectives that need to be brought in, but the main thing for me is always the foundational work. I'm sorry, I know I'm breaking up. So again, the main thing for me is the foundational work. The foundational work means, does everybody understand the definitions that we're working with when we come to DEI? Is everybody in the same page when we're talking about diversity, when we're talking about equity, when we're talking about inclusion? And if we all understand and we all in agreement, then that's how we start building up these things, because there's so many different cultures within our district. We have 40 plus home languages. I'm pretty sure that's way up higher. We're gonna be welcoming the new Afghanistan community as well, which is gonna be a whole different culture that we're gonna have to learn. And then there's all these other subgroups with different mixed family statuses that we still have yet to talk about. So again, to not try to give you guys a novel, there's a lot of foundational work that still needs to be done in order to be able to fully understand all the representation that our school district really has. Because Kansas City is diverse, our school district is diverse. And in order for DEI to work, we really need to understand one another. If we're going in without a plan or without an understanding, we're gonna have to backtrack and redo things all over again. So understanding is the main point for me at first. We need to understand in order to be able to create good decisions for the students and their families, and the pathways that we're showing them and resources that they have.
Thank you for your response. Last, we'll have Wanda.
Okay, in regard to DEI, it's critical that our school board buys into it. They have to be willing to put the money, the time, the effort, and we haven't always done that consistently. You have to be willing, and I think this year we have someone who's going to be over it, who's committed, a former principal. That helps if they have that experience. So we have to be willing to put the money, the time, the effort. And in regard to recruitment, HR, our staff should reflect our student population. So that means we have to go out and recruit people who look like our students. I'm not saying one race can only do one thing. We got to have diversity. We've had too much in regard to psychiatrists and social workers who've done studies who said children need to see themselves. So it's critical that we recruit teachers, we have diversity, we buy in and support our Department of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. And then every school, they have to have a plan. They have to develop that plan. And in that plan, the school should include the community, the students, the teachers, business people. Bring everybody in and have a conversation. And we have to have honest conversations. We don't need to mess around. This is critical. In order for our students to be successful, everybody needs to take part and have a seat at the table. We also need diversity in the materials that we use to teach our students. We've worked on that this year, where we've had parents call and say, well, I really didn't like that book that they were using, that we need to look at that. So we're doing more with that. But if we can start at the top with the board investing in this department to make sure that the people who are running it are doing their jobs, and then recruit, make sure the schools are doing their job.
Time.
If we can do that, we can do it. Okay.
Thank you. All right, our next question is, what is your thought on parent, community, and student engagement? What ideas would you have if you were elected? And first up is Rachel.
Of course, I get to be first up on this question. So I really would love Gloria Willis, who we now have a wonderful school named after her in her honor. She was a big role model for, or a big advocate for PTAs. And so how do we, if it's not PTA, PTO, parent advisory groups, how do we create that at a building level, you know, creating leaders, sustainability, those types of things. But then how do we also have that responsiveness as board members to pull together our own advisory board? If I was to be elected, I would like to see us pull together a district advisory board with representation from all of the schools, to be able to keep our pulse on what the community is talking about, being able to bring policies to these parents, to these guardians, to the community, and continue to build on that building level PTA, site council environment. I think the other piece is also being responsive to questions, or being responsive to difference of opinions when folks reach out to board members. We are elected by our community, and oftentimes I hear stories where people send emails or they have discussions and they don't get responses back. It's easy for us to be like, ask the district, because we don't know every single thing, but how do we continue to follow back up with those folks who reached out to us as board members for answers? And sometimes our staff gets so busy, they don't get back to them. And so we have to value our community by ensuring that we close the loop in those conversations as well.
Thank you, Rachel. Next up is Angelynn. You're muted.
Gotta fix this. Okay, can you hear me now? Sorry. I think our parents need to be heard. We've been taken down a pathway where people aren't listening to us. We go in and we complain about our students, ask questions about the education process, and no one's listening. They give you a standard line of we'll check into it. And I think our parents have checked out. They are tired of not being heard. They're tired of their students not being treated well. They're tired of their students asking for extra work or extra help and not receiving it. And so trying to get our parents back in, I've been holding monthly meetings. And as a board member, I think a monthly meeting from your representatives who you're representing in your neighborhood, in your district, in your area, is a good way to keep them informed. Let them know what's happening on the board. Let them know what policies are being made, what different processes for educating their students is happening, like Google Classroom to Canvas. Things like that need to be given to parents so that they can help their students. And I think right now, there's a disconnect between the board, the administration, and the parents. So I am working to pull the parents back in, because I am a parent and I like to know what's happening at the school level and how I can help my student and help the school to teach my student. So if we all get together, and that's what I keep telling the people that I'm meeting with, we all will be at the table in my board seat. You will have the voice that you're looking for. You'll have someone speaking up for you. You'll have someone informing you as to what's going on, because I know sometimes I can't figure out what's going on or can't get the information that I'm looking for. So as a board member, my plan is to be that person for the parents.
Thank you. Next up, we'll have Diosselyn.
Thank you, Sheyvette. So for our parents and students engagements, I definitely agree with my colleagues here that what they just said. And adding on to language access, right? We've started the work, but we're not even remotely close to all the languages that are out there that we're going to be, interacting with in order to get all of our parents involved and understand the systems that they are now, involved in, because that's another thing. School education systems are very different in their hometowns, right? So being able to figure out ways that we can get these parents their access to get the information, to understand it, because I've seen, like you said, there's tables, listening sessions, workshops that are being held. Some parents get to them if they get those resources. Parents who may not have that language access may be left behind. So those are others that I would like to really bring into the table. And besides that, it's just, again, working with trust, rebuilding the trust with our parents. They really need to be able to trust the board in order for us to be able to continue to work together. And above all, with the students for their engagement, I want to bring in more exposures. One of the biggest things that as an organizer that I always continue to think about when I go into this, it's getting the students to go to the Capitol. How many of us don't go to the Capitol after elementary? Getting just students to get exposure with leadership and being them having the voice to tell us where they're at, what are they needing, what other things are they looking for, right? So again, listening to our parents, listening to our students, and being able to then fill in the gaps to truly understand what they're looking for.
Thank you. Next up, we're going to have Wanda.
Okay. In terms of parent, student, community engagement, I think the first thing we're going to have to do is open the doors to our schools. We put locks and alarms to keep the bad guys out, but I think we've also kept our community out. So we need to open our doors, and we could offer, if they need tips on math, reading, any concerns, bring them up. And I agree with Rachel. Somehow, back in the day, PTAs used to work. And I know it's a problem with the time span and people are working, but whatever way that we can, if we have to offer morning sessions, if you couldn't make it in the evening, we have to Zoom, but try every opportunity to engage with parents and students, to hear from them. And if they call, we need to be approachable. I feel that I try. That's one thing I pride myself. If you call me, I'm going to try to figure out, connect you with the right people so that we can get your problem hopefully resolved. It may take a little more time than we thought, but it can be worked out. And we do have to open the doors, allow people to come in, see what we're doing. And then if they need help, because with new math, we're not doing math the way I used to do it. And I know I tried to help nephews and we had to go back and let's go and come in if they had tutoring sessions, something to help out more. But we got to talk to each other and we just got to find out, what do you need? How can we help you? But open the doors and let people in so that we can communicate with each other and find out what we need to do.
Thank you. Our last response for this question will come from Maxine.
Could you repeat the question for me, please?
What is your thoughts on parent, community, and student engagement? And as a board member, what ideas would you have?
Well, the first thing I want to say is that I do agree with what everyone else has been saying, that our parents actually do need to be involved. Once I've come on the school board, one of the things I've learned is that we operate under policies. We set the policies in which the schools are supposed to operate. From that level, one of the things I've gotten involved with is Kansas Association of School Boards, which represents our entire state. There are some formats and guidelines that we have to follow being a part of that. One of the things that I would encourage our district to do is to get parents more involved in understanding what the role of KASB is. Also, as it has been mentioned, for not only our students to recognize what the state of Kansas in the Department of Education, what their role is and the guidelines that they give us that we have to follow. We do need to set up better ways in which our parents can be involved with PTA so that they can learn and know how they can actively be engaged within the schools. We need them to be a little bit more regular in attending those meetings, not to look at it from a traditional point of view, but to look at it a way in which we can move in a more positive direction. Once we can get our parents involved in that, then therefore our teachers, our students will see that it is a unit that is working together. But until we can at least try to address bringing our parents in and knowing what they really need in order to be able to support them would be the best thing that we can do. it will work if we all come together as one.
Thank you. All right, so we have a question from one of our guests in the audience. What would you do to help create transparency and trust between the district, the Board of Education, building leadership, and school staff? And that question will go to Angelynn.
Transparency, accountability, inclusion, all of it goes together. We need to have our families to be able to come in and ask questions to get those answers. We need for our students to be able to ask questions, get answers. We need to be able to all work together because education right now is just out there in the technology world, and our students aren't able to connect to some of the technology. And so the transparency would be come in and see what's happening in your classrooms. Come in and see what we're doing at the board level. Come in and see how the administrators and the teachers are being trained. Come and see what is actually being done to educate your student. We don't want all the madness going on, but we do want you to be there so that you can help with your student. And so we'll be able to welcome them in. You have to let the parents back in because they've been dismissed, you know? And so I'm all about getting the parents back in to help their students to understand that their part is a vital part in their children's education. I'm all about getting the parents back. We got to get our parents back in the buildings to help our kids, to help the kids, not to create problems and distraction, but to help our kids to be more successful. And that's the way I feel.
Thank you. Next up is Diosselyn.
Thank you. What would I do to create transparency and trust between all? Honestly, it goes back to just building relationships, right? Being able to have a conversation with another person and really listening, not to defend or not to respond back, but to truly understand and see where they're coming from. Again, trust is hard to regain back. And we know this as human beings, just as personal individuals. So we have to continue to show up. We have to continue to not only say, but to follow up with actions and be able to make sure that the individuals that are looking for these actions, they get that communication. It's one thing to say like, we did it, post it, and not be able to get back to that one individual, right? So it would be one of those things where if we're gonna do something, make sure that we also go back to those individuals, communities, parents, teachers, students that are bringing this forth to us so they can understand what we're doing. Because if we're just assuming that everybody understands what we're doing, it goes back to the lack of communication and the lack of transparency, right? Sometimes it's not that we're doing things wrong. It's just that we just need that extra communication to fully understand all the dynamics that are going forth with the processes, with the systems, with the decisions that are being made. So again, it's really showing up, really listening, and having those places where we can listen. There was a time where even other individuals started doing cafecitos in the community where they had individuals come to certain places to just go talk to them. And those are things that we could easily do to start listening to our community and figuring out where are those gaps that we need to start filling in for that trust to be built again. Everybody's different and it's not fair to do one whole equation. So listening to everybody and making sure that we truly understand and not only listen to respond.
Thank you for that response. Next up, we will have Wanda.
Okay. Again, I'll go back to, I agree with what I've heard so far. We do have to talk to each other, but we gotta open the doors of our schools and allow people to come in. And secondly, we've got to figure out what's the best way to communicate with people. If they, but people find this hard to believe. To have a computer and to have all this, and you know you have to pay Spectrum, they're not doing it for free. So we got to figure out, should we mail some things? I know that people say that's a dinosaur, but that may be your only way to communicate, and make sure we do it in all the different languages. We've got to use our phone systems. We got to use every form of the media old and new, so that we can make sure that we communicate what we're doing, survey people, ask them what they think, give everybody a chance to speak. We'll be at this school. The topic is, are you concerned? Come out, visit with us, give us your suggestions. This is what we're proposing. Get it out there and just make sure we flood it. And then we have a media station where we can use that more to get information out. We just got to use every form of media that we can to get our ideas out and allow people to come in, talk, share, and build. It can work. We just have to be willing to talk to each other. We're not going to agree on everything, but we can find a happy medium. And that's what we have to work to do. Allow people the chance to speak, make sure we get our information out, use the different forms of media, and I believe we can work it out. But we have to be willing to use whatever resources we have. We have to be willing to listen, and we have to talk to each other. Thank you.
Thank you for your response. Next, we'll have Maxine.
Okay. One of the things that I've seen is the fact that our district is trying to communicate and do the best they can to be able to make sure not only that the students know, but their parents know. If we continue with the plan that we have in place, the district can also offer new and different ways in which the process can be done. We have to make sure that we're going to fulfill the emptiness of a lot of the parents or students not knowing what is going on. But the only way that we can do it is put in a check and balance system. We have to be consistent with what we're doing. We have to make sure that we look at where the strengths are, where the weaknesses are, but also find ways in which we can open to new ideas. Open communication is the way to do it. Traditional way in which parents raise from the way I grew up is not in place right now. So I agree with what has been said, that we have to find ways in which we can motivate and move them in the right direction. And even if the plan doesn't work, sit down, refocus, and try to put in something a little bit differently. But we have to continue to keep adding on, educating, and moving forward, because that is the only way we're going to be able to help our students to see that if you make a mistake, you don't give in, but you fix it and then you move on in a positive way.
Thank you so much. And our last response will be Rachel.
Yeah, I would say that I agree with all of the things that have been said, and I will just focus on a few things. So communication. And so I am excited that the board this last week decided to redo the website, because it is, if we know that most of our parents are accessing the website on their mobile phone, great. Let's make sure that our website is accessible in that way. Let's also make sure that the things on our website are accessible for folks to find and not have to search or do so much that they, just get exhausted by looking for it. There are ways that folks can communicate with the school board, and unfortunately, it's drowned out in all of the other things that are on the website. And so access to, school board meetings and knowing where and those types of things. And so I think communication is key, but I think at the building level, Maxine talked about consistency. We currently have Infinite Campus, we have Canva, we have Flyer Connect. No one parent, and I'm talking for myself, depending on the teacher, depending on the class, I have to go around to all of those websites to find what I need, and that's not fun. And so I think that, but also at a building and a district level, we also have to be consistent. So what's taking place at one school, so my child goes over here and they go over there, the rules are different. And so how do we get to a level where there's a framework of consistency and all of the buildings and all of the classrooms are doing similar systemic work, but then we are allowing that freedom for innovation. The last thing that I will say, it just lost me, is I want to make sure that going back to that responsiveness of how decisions are made, and then communicating that to folks, because I think that's a lot of where the transparency lies, is people don't quite understand how decisions are made, and then they're put on people and don't understand the chain of command or how things happen. So
thank you so much. Our next question is going to go to Diosselyn. So when we talk about employment for our students, certifications versus college degrees, what do you think the next steps should be for the district?
Honestly, thank you, Sheyvette, because I really love this question. I honestly had to figure out a lot of ways, and just to share a little bit about me and why I feel strong on this to get into it. A lot of the people that supported me to get back up when things were not going the way, when it was my senior year in high school and trying to figure out whether I was going to go to college or not after having different certificates, being an IB student at Sumner Academy and all these different things, right? Those were the things that truly started getting me up. Those were the things that really started showing me that I had ways, that I had pathways to make something happen. So just to let you know, a lot of my counselors told me that I couldn't graduate from college or I couldn't go to college after being a very great student. And I took that as a challenge and went ahead and worked with all the different networks, all the different individuals, organizations, mentors that I was able to have throughout all of this. So again, to try to tie it back to this, I believe that we need to be more supportive in exposure for our students. We shouldn't be having them choose between taking their honors classes and having an internship. Both of them are crucial. And the other thing that I really want to say and I want to drive is that our students need to understand their value and how much of a gem they are in our workforce. A lot of our workforce, and we talked about, DEI just a little bit ago, a lot of workforce is looking for that. And our students already packed with that. It's innate with them. They are diverse. They do communicate with different people. They understand all the different languages and cultures. And these are the people that are needed right now because of the issues that we're facing as a whole world, to be honest. So again, I want to be able to make more pathways for students to have access to this, not have to choose, but have opportunities so they can see all the different things that they can do, all the different roles that they can be, and all the different careers that they can choose. It's not one equation answer for all, right? So that's it. Thank you.
Next up, we'll have Wanda.
Okay. The one thing that I think we have that I don't think that we utilize to its fullest is Diploma Plus. And it blows my mind. The first year I was on the board, only one student graduated with a high school diploma and an associate's degree. The second year, we had 3 students graduate with a high school diploma and an associate. In this past year, we had 8. We pay Kansas City, Kansas Community College $500,000. And we've been doing that. And I don't think we get the return on our buck. So that means we got to get more young people. And I would agree with the young lady that we've got to allow them some diversity. And now, in order to have the different paths, we got to have the money to get the teachers to set up the programs, but we got to make it work and get more of our young people involved in Diploma Plus. Not only if they want a degree, they can get that. If they want a certificate, they should be plumbers, carpenters, electricians, heating and cooling. There's so many different things we can offer through the program. In the program you work with, Ms. Dinkens, we got to figure out how to get more people involved and get young people where when they graduate, if they don't want to go to college, they have a viable skill that they can support themselves. And we just got to do a better job. But Diploma Plus is something, when I tell people about that, they say, what? If I had that, we just got to get the kids to buy into it, get their parents. I don't know if they know, but we really got to sell it, push it, and then also encourage them to go into our tech program. You just want to be that Renaissance person. You can do it all. And they can. They just need the opportunity. Thank you.
You're welcome. Next up, we'll have Maxine.
Thank you for asking me this question. I think it's very important for us to be able to implement it within our schools. I am in favor of starting with them in middle school to be able to find out what their strengths and weaknesses are as far as what jobs they would like to have in the future, and then to help try to put a program in place that will help educate them to see if I want to be a teacher or if I want to be a barber, what steps they need to take. And I do believe our district does have a program information that is available for them to be able to fill out information and then follow a path in which that they will be on. But again, we have to make sure that we are going to consistently follow through with this career pathway so that the students will see that this is the plan that I'm going to be on. And even if they decide to change their minds once they get to high school, at least have something that will help support them in what they want to do throughout the time that they're going to be educated. We can't not let something like this happen. What we have to do is open the door, implement it, get parental support, and then build partnerships with the community, whereas they can go and do some summer work, even if it's taking out the trash, but seeing what the job is like in order for them to be able to do that. Thank you.
All right, next up, we'll have Rachel.
Yeah, so I would say and agree that our Diploma Plus program is very underutilized. And that does not speak badly to those that are working in that department. I just think that there is a lot of opportunity for growth there. We as a district do have a policy where our kids get more credit hours than they need to graduate in the state of Kansas. So how do we look at that policy and potentially look at trading those extra credit hours out for actual learned experience? Randy Watson, when he launched the Moonshot, he talked about life skills. He talked about civic skills. He talked about all these things that our businesses say they want in our students. So how do we, similar to how a teacher does student teaching prior to their first year of teaching, what does it look like for us to grow with those partnerships that we have in the community? Because we have those. We saw those reflected in this last board meeting. Jay Dunn had an internship with a student, and then they went on to hire another student. And so how do we leverage those relationships and the opportunities that Diploma Plus, provides and create more engaged students? What does Diploma Plus look like in the summer? We see a lot on the KCMO side, Hire KC. We see all these internship opportunities. How do we implement or bring those things forth to the students in our district to ensure that we know there's a lack of after school programming? We know there's a lack of summer programming for students. So how do we help not only solve a community problem and the shortages in staff, but also make sure that our kids have the skills moving forward to be successful citizens in Wyandotte County?
All right, next up, we will have Angelynn.
Can you repeat the question, please?
So when we talk about employment for our students, certifications versus college degree, what's kind of your perspective and what do you think the next steps should be for our school district?
I think, and I have a child that is in college now, but, and a child that's in high school. But what I would like to see, more job shadowing, more career days, because there's more to this career world besides being a doctor, a lawyer, a teacher. You know, there's many, many, many jobs out there, and our students need to be introduced to those jobs. You know, there's jobs at the EPA that are multi-level jobs, besides, you know, the chemical engineers, besides the environmental engineers. There's still other jobs out there that our students don't know about. There's factory jobs like at GM, you know, what it takes to get one of those jobs. Our students need to be introduced to some of those career people to say, this is what I do, this is how I got here, this is the education level that it took to get me here. I didn't have to go to college, but I took a couple of, you know, community college classes that prepared me, that gave me a skill. So I think we need to start looking to have people to come in and say, these are some of the things that are out here. These are some of the life skills that you possibly need in order to do some of these jobs. Actually have some people come in and maybe teach what they do so that our students will be aware of how math is related to this particular job, or how the chemistry class can get you a job at the EPA building. Those kinds of things. I think we kind of missed that now in this new technology age of, they can look it up and find out. But if you have somebody come in and actually tell you and kind of tell you how it all relates together, it kind of gives you a, I can do that. I'm interested in that. Maybe you'll pursue that. So I think we just need to start, finding different ways to get people interacted.
Thank you. I believe our last response is Diosselyn.
Can you repeat the question again too? Sorry.
All right, when we're thinking about employment, certifications versus college degrees for our students, what do you think the next steps should be for our district?
I agree with a lot of what's been said. Being able to bring in those individuals that can share their stories. Again, there are so many different individuals that came out of USD 500 that are doing amazing things in the world right now. How can we pull them back in to show them, like Angelynn said, and like many others said, that they can do these things, that there's more than what they're being told. And I'll touch base more on undocumented students and immigrant students, just because I know that everything else was filled. Undocumented students and other immigrant students or mixed status families needs to know that there are resources out there, that there are many pathways for their students to get careers and to enforce their title and the degree that they get into. There's many individuals who tell them that they don't have a choice, but they have lots of choices. So with that, it's just being able to really integrate that portion of making sure that other students that have a different pathway to college, a different pathway to community colleges, universities, or whichever, that they understand what those pathways are. And not only that, being able to keep our families safe. One of the biggest things when they are transitioning to different further education is making sure that our families are safe. There's a lot of concerns. There's a lot of different things that come up that are not understandable. There's a lot of policies that play into this system. So being able to have our families understand that and be able to let them know that they are safe to do this, and what are those options that are best for them. Again, I could go on into this whole thing, but I really do feel like we need to be able to give more information and be able to connect them, like everybody said, connect them so they can know and understand where this path leads to and what are other things that can come forth from that.
Thank you so much. We're coming to a close tonight. You guys had really great responses. I'm going to leave with a mix of a question. So you guys will have 2 minutes to respond to that question and give your last minute, why should you vote for me answer. So the question is going to kind of be mixed. When we talk about pay raises for our teachers and staff for the district, and we talk about the pandemic and technology, how can we make some changes in the district to support our teachers during the pandemic, our students during the pandemic, and how do we include innovation and technology in those changes? And we will start with Maxine.
Thank you for starting with me. There is a lot that we have to look at. When you talk about the pay raises, the pandemic, the support for the teachers, and is there one answer that we can put out there? No, it isn't. But what we can do is to come up with a plan as to how we can implement it, look at the strengths, look at the weaknesses, but we have to make sure that we are going to be actively engaged in doing what we need to do in order to supply the needs. Yes, teachers need to be paid more, but one of the things that I've learned through attending several meetings, and I did attend one in Washington, D.C., it's across the board. But what we can do within our own school district is to find a way in which we can bring in more funding for our teachers to cut back on some things, but then use it toward increasing the money that is going to be paid to the teachers. Our pandemic has changed the dynamic of life overall, but the only way that we can bring about a change is to be consistent with what we have in place. Ask our parents to be very supportive, try to support the teachers as leadership individuals, as well as students and teachers. We are in a whole world that is changing within Kansas City, Kansas. But if we work together, we will bring about a change that will make a success, not only for our students, but for the entire staff of the Kansas City, Kansas School District. Thank you.
All right, thank you for your response. And anyone let me know if I need to repeat that, because that was a lot all at once. Next up, we'll have Diosselyn, you're up next.
Oh, okay.
Can you repeat the question?
Okay, so we have 2 minutes. Each person will have 2 minutes left. I'm mixing a couple questions together. So when we're talking about pay increase for teachers and staff for USD 500, we're talking about the pandemic, we're talking about technology, we're talking about innovation. What kind of things do you think the district can use to support all of those things throughout the district?
I think one of the things that the district is doing, and I'm starting to see more, is being able to have those listening workshops and sessions to be able to hear from the individuals to see what they really need. Again, the biggest thing with me and as a grassroots organizer is that I don't want to come in with an answer and say, this is what you should do, or this is how you should navigate it. I really need to hear, and we really need to hear as a whole, as a team, what they're looking for, what the teachers are looking for. What are the technology issues that are happening within our parents? I heard a parent say that they were grateful that at John Fisk they had a computer class, but that all our schools have a computer class where our parents can understand the systems that we're using, right? There's so many different things within the pandemic that has shifted throughout, but there are ways that we can continue to support by bringing in different resources. I understand that there's a lot of different protocols that we have to follow, but I am a big believer on creative and using our resources that we already have. So it goes back to leveraging our connections with community organizations, with people who are already doing this job and being able to reconnect them back in, right? We shouldn't only see it in Diploma Plus, we should see it throughout our whole district. There's so many different individuals that are ready to help us, and we just need to be reaching out. With that, with their teachers, with their students, and everybody else with the there's like, and we really need to start showing them that we care, that we value them, and that we want them to stay in our district, whether that is through an increase in payment or if it's in other forms of maybe professional development that they may be seeking for or looking for, or is it that they're trying to look for a home in our community, right? There's so many different innovative and creativeness way that we can show our community that we care and that we want to reinvest back in them, because it's not only school, right? There's so many other livable things that happen in our personal lives that we should also care about to make sure that the individual is good. So when they come to the school, they're happy and they're coming out here with all the full energy, right? So thank you.
Thank you so much. Next up is Wanda.
Okay, that was a big question and I like that. We have a $450 million budget. Now, if we have that kind of money, then we need to be able to pay teachers, keep teachers. We need to make sure we invest on student retention to keep our kids in school, to keep them active. We also need to have academic success. COVID did a number on us. And we were out for almost a year. So now we're back in. So we need to provide the tutoring programs to engage our students with more hands-on activities and to fund that, help our teachers get the things that they need so that they can teach. Make sure they have the supplies, whether it's books, materials to do those hands-on things, the technology. We need to make sure the technology works. We have the money to do it. We just need to use it for that. We also need to, I remember when First Things First came out, I taught for 30 years. And our goal was to make sure we had student teacher ratio was supposed to be 1 to 20. Well, that would be the ideal situation, which means we got to cut these class sizes down. My last year teaching, I averaged anywhere from 35 to 40 students in a room. We've got to stop that because you can't do it. And if we want our kids to be successful, we got to reduce the class sizes, add as many teachers as we can get, and get teachers from our community. We have people who were born and raised here, who are teaching in other districts. They want to come back. Let's go out and get them and bring them back. They want to help our kids. They want them to be successful, and we can do it. Let's take our funds, let's pay our teachers, let's get our community involved. And there's so many programs that we can do to help our people. Thank you. Get on the right page with Wanda Paige. Remember that.
Thank you, Wanda. Next up, we'll have Rachel, and Angelynn, you will follow up from Rachel.
Yeah, and so I apologize. If the question was not about staff, I do want to address staff overall, which I think when we talk about raises, I immediately think about equity. And so I said it a couple of weekends ago, we have to make sure that we're equitable in raises. So giving one set of individuals a raise that is 12 to 16% and giving the others short of 5% for some of the highest classified instructors in the classroom, I think where's the equity in that? And so I also think that when we look at a staff as a whole, if we cannot get our staff to $15 per hour, we are saying that we are okay with our staff living in poverty. If you think about what 15 times 40 times 26 weeks in a year is, that's not a living wage even at 15. And so I think those are decisions that we have to make that are hard, but those are decisions that also show where your value in the folks that you hire is. And so that addresses that. I think earlier I spoke a little bit about being innovative. Since the pandemic, the use of technology has grown since we spent almost 18 months remote learning. It's important that we know we have shortages. We know we have all of these areas where it is not a traditional class day. We cannot carry on like we did in 2018 and 2021 or beyond. And so really looking at what the classroom looks like in the years to come, I think is what those that are elected and those elected in the future will have to really look at, because I don't think that our classroom can continue to be our traditional saying. With that being said, vote Rachel for USD 500. Go to my website, www.rachelforusd500.com to learn more about me. Thank you.
Right, last up is Angelynn. Thank you. And then after Angelynn is done, we'll turn it back over to Mainstream. You're muted. You're muted. We can't hear you.
Okay, can you hear me now? I'm sorry. The question was a lot of questions. Pay raises, pandemic, teacher, student, technology, all of that included. Right now, our technology has changed this year, meaning we've gone from Google Classroom to Canvas. Canvas wasn't meant to be a learning tool. And no one asked, once again, the teachers what they thought about it or how it's affecting our students. I've talked to some teachers. I've talked to a principal and said, how did we get here? What happened to Google Classroom? And it was purchased 2 years ago, Canvas, was purchased 2 years ago, and then started in use this year. And so our students haven't been trained on Canvas. Our teachers have had a couple of, training sessions, but Google Classroom was meant to be a learning tool, a tool for the classroom where you can interact with each other. The teachers can put the classwork out there and bring it back in, and the students can intermingle with each other in Google Classroom, whereas Canvas is not like that. I've asked if we can go back to Google Classroom and use Canvas for what its purpose was, which is a communications tool. And so our technology is ever growing. We're always searching for new ideas, for new things, but we need to include the teachers in on some of that decision making, because they are the ones that are having to teach our students how to use the technology, whether it's Google or Canvas or Parent Plus or what, all the other stuff that's out there. And so, yes, our teachers do need a pay raise because they have a responsibility like none other. They're caught between the students, they're caught between the parents, and they're caught between, Mama, time's up. Are you serious? No. Well, thank you so much. I'm Angelynn Howell, running for school board for your voice at the table.
Thank you guys for actually doing a great job on that large, challenging question. And that's really what your role is going to be when you are elected or re-elected. It's going to be a big challenge. So I'm glad that you guys are running, or you guys are rerunning, and I'm going to hand it back over to Mainstream. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sheyvette, for moderating this evening, and to the candidates for taking the time to share their perspectives with us. I'd also like to recognize one more time our partners this evening who made this forum possible: League of Women Voters, Mainstream Coalition, Climate Action KC, Dot Votes, Mid-America LGBT Chamber, Safe and Welcoming Wyandotte Coalition, and Servicing Lips. The League and Mainstream will be posting recordings of these forums on Facebook and YouTube, so please share them with your network of voters. Remember, the last day to register to vote for the general election is on October 12th. Advanced ballots will begin to be mailed on October 13th, and of course, Election Day is November 2nd. Before you vote, please visit vote411.org and ksballot.org to read up on all the candidates on your ballot, find your polling location, and make a plan to vote. Thank you again for joining, and remember to vote and get others to vote on or before November 2nd.